Alright guys, today we got a special treat for you. I hope this satisfies some of y'all's curiosity about Panopticon. A band, a project, a man, a friend, a lot of things to me. So I'm just going to talk about the shit ton of records that he has put out over the years and talk a little bit about our friendship. It's a topic that I've kind of avoided on my channel. Not like I'm going to be getting super into it right now, but as I'm sure a lot of you know, he likes his privacy and kind of stays off of the social media. So, and I'm pretty close with Austin of Panopticon and have been for years, and so it's been kind of weird for me to talk about Panopticon without like kind of tearing down that wall. But so I'll get into it a little bit here and hopefully inform you enough to enjoy the video and just talk about some really good records and a really good friend of mine that's had a lot to do with some of the more important changes in my life as a person for the better. It all started 2007, I think it was. I was getting ready to leave for Chicago to go see Niflheim play, and my friend and I were running Pagan Flames back then, and he had sent me a message on MySpace and said, check out this new band, I really like it, I just want to see what your thoughts are about it. And I'm thinking about releasing their record. So I went to his page, checked out the demo materials on there, and it was interesting. It was somewhat unique, and I remember thinking that I didn't know what to think about a black metal band with like that was bringing in this kind of like new ideals. There was definitely like some crust punk kind of crossover going on, and like it all manifested in the visualization of Austin with dreadlocks down to here and corpse paint on. It just seemed like this merging of worlds that I wasn't ready for, and I think that still holds true, and that wound up being what elevated Panopticon to the next level. And he's been really just creating a fan base for himself all along. So we'll start with the discography by me grabbing one thing I forgot to grab. By the way, we are listening to a record that Austin bought for me at Reckless Records in Chicago, Townes Van Zant's Delta Mama Blues. He's had a lot to do with me opening up my mind and heart to country folk music, especially Townes Van Zant, Blaze Foley, Coulter Wall, etc., etc. But so we're gonna start chronologically with a band that he started out playing in when he lived in Memphis, the People's War. This is a very politically charged punk band. Punk is kind of a diminutive word, I guess, to use for it because it is raging. Comes with a poster. You should be able to get a copy of this 7-inch on Discogs for quite cheap if you are the Panopticon completionist. Tons of lyrics and material on here about what these songs are about. They are anti-capitalist as fuck, and it's really, really good. They cram 10 songs on this little 7-inch here, and you can see there he is, raging with a hole in his jeans. So yeah, that's the People's War, and this release is called, there's so much stuff. Making Enemies EP. They also released something like a CDR demo that came out on something else. I'm not too sure about that. But so, the very first Panopticon release is here. It was a self-titled album, and it had just come out when we first started talking with him. And so when we decided, yes, let's do an album together, we said we can do two things. We can release your next album, which I think was already underway, which wound up being Collapse, or we can put out what you already did, your demo. This is a screen printed booklet, and it's kind of hard to take apart. But a lot of his early releases had this Lunder Records thing on it. So we said we can either put out Collapse or we can put out your first demo. Oh man, I think, yeah, these are screen printed and they're stuck together. I'm going to take these apart really carefully. There's really no reason to be taking these apart because I have other versions of this album. Oh, come on. Well, I'm going to put some linen paper in here or something. But there you have that. And all of his early DIY releases would have a lot of like patches with them and stuff. He was really into screen printing back in the day. I had these little flyers that came with them. I think I showed that already. And they came in these digibooks, as you can see. I really like this. Pretty relevant today. Smash the State. Thick booklet, tons of explanations and lyrics. Emma's song, the last track on here, is about Emma Goldman. And I honestly, looking back, I kind of miss this era where there was all this kind of more of like a propaganda kind of feel to it. Things have changed, obviously, quite a bit for Panopticon, but looking back at this just kind of shows me how much things have evolved for him and the band. So that is the demo version of that album, and then we, as Pagan Flames, first put out a jewel case version of it. Mostly the same artwork, just black and white. This is a really raw recording. It's very, very dark and black metal compared to his other material. In fact, I would say this is maybe his only truly black metal material. I don't know if this will ever get reissued. I kind of think it would be a nice idea to reissue this with maybe a remaster or something, along with the what's the other one? Collapse, yeah. But you may never see a vinyl version of this, so and you may never see a CD reissue of this. So if you're thinking about completing your Panopticon collection, now's the time to get on it. I believe there are still copies available. So that is Collapse. Don't have that on vinyl. No. Self-titled. Collapse is next. And that was reissued on vinyl a couple of years after it came out on CD. There it is. So we did this maybe 2008 or so. Last copies, I think, just sold out maybe last year or so, and the LP is long sold out. I think there were just 1,000 copies of this originally, but from the self-titled to this one shows just a wealth of growth, and I still think a lot of these songs are really, really, really well written. And it's still a great listen. Some of these songs are still played live by the band. So this by no means is a dead and forgotten record by any means. It's still a celebrated album in his discography, and it probably could use a vinyl reissue. I'll take this out. There's a lot of, one thing about Panopticon is a lot of their vinyl reissues are on really fancy splatter wax and stuff like that. So at the time, Austin was way more vinyl minded, but Pagan Flames were really leery of getting into the vinyl territory. It's a lot more expensive. We didn't really have that kind of money. Having the layout done on their templates had burned us on the few vinyl releases that we had already done. So we were just really reluctant to do that. And luckily Flenser stepped in and wound up reissuing this one on vinyl. Second album. So now there's a couple of splits in there that I'm not so sure about the chronology on, but I will show you them and try to explain to my best ability how that all went down, because it is confusing. So there are two splits with a band called Wheels Within Wheels, and that's our friend Crow, who still lives in Louisville, Kentucky. Now we'll get into that in a few minutes. So here's another one of those with the strip on it, and this is the first split with Wheels Within Wheels. Wheels Within Wheels is a very unique project, a little more maybe on the noisy kind of side of things, kind of like doomy black noise. It's really, really haunting and just strange. I have a shirt there. Another thing is, I'm not showing you all probably 9 or 10 Panopticon shirts that I have. Since he's way into screen printing, he's always got lots and lots of merchandise going on. Get back in there, you DIY. So this is number 6 out of 100. Got some vellum paper. I believe this came with a patch that had this bat on it, and I sadly forgot to retrieve this from a poor excuse for an ex-girlfriend. So that's Wheels Within Wheels Split 1. When Wheels Within Wheels Split 2 came out, we also reissued a limited version of 1. So here's the Pagan Flames reissue of what I just showed you, limited to 100 copies, and I believe, yeah, this is just a CDR, so it was just kind of a limited thing to get a few more copies out there, and also kind of drum up support for the second Wheels Within Wheels split. And I feel like a lot of people are Panopticon fans, but they kind of forget to go back and give some credit to these splits. They're really good, and they're intended as a way of bringing attention to his friend's music, which is good, entertaining, and enriching. So there is Wheels Within Wheels. And then we have the split with California's Lake of Blood. This was also self-released on Lunder Records. Now, so this may have come before Collapse. I'm kind of probably screwing up the chronology of all this, but you'll live. You can look it up on Metal Archives and all that. And this one came with a envelope deal. Still has the patch there. I keep all that stuff together. So like, I don't put a lot of important patches on my patch vest. I like it to be just kind of big name bands and stuff that doesn't have collectability to it. You'll probably see this in the background of a lot of my videos and wonder what it is. So there was a limited edition version of Collapse CD that was sent out with a shirt, the box, burned wood on it, and it had just a slew of patches with it. Here's a Christmas card he sent me a couple 10 years ago probably. Another patch, Collapse. So that is my Panopticon box. It's got a nice little latch with it. I still wear this shirt to this day. At some juncture, So we hadn't met yet. We were friends on Facebook, messaged back and forth, shared music here and there. But still at this point, I wasn't good, close, personal friends with Austin. And there came a point where I could tell that something was really weird and going on with him. I think he found out that he had some kind of heart problem, some medical issues, and he really started to freak out and have a lot of anxieties about dying. And so that coincided with the writing process for the next album. And that wound up being on the subject of mortality. However, he felt weird about releasing that as a record on its own and felt more comfortable releasing this material separately with two bands who he felt embodied livelihood and life and vibrant healthiness. And so what wound up happening out of that was a split with Skagos. Skagos is an amazing Cascadian black metal band who are sadly and sorely missed. And this came out on Flenser. And like, this was just a period where there was just a barrage of Panopticon releases, seemingly. And then we also did the When Bitter Spring Sleeps split with Panopticon, where there's 3 tracks. I sing on We Cower in the Storms of Her Retribution, and I believe I played drums on Flames That Taste the Rain. So this is On the Subject of Mortality Part 1 and Part 2. It was later released as one album, later reissued by Flenser as a single record. And this came, it was limited, sold out really quickly, came on clear, kind of frosty clear vinyl, and this has since been reissued very recently by Nordvis and Binderun. It also comes with a patch there. I've burned through so many Panopticon patches that just have the logo on them. Anyways, don't re-sleeve on camera. So On the Subject of Mortality was a really, really moving album. He still, to this day, I think, calls it his favorite release. It has since been remastered, re-edited, and completely remade for the Revisions of the Past release, which we'll talk about a little bit more. So then, in the timeline of things, there was an Agalloch show in Chicago, and we wound up meeting up there. Austin and I, Ron and his wife and friends. It was a great time. So we wound up meeting there, and then we realized, like, God, we gotta be better friends. We gotta stay more in touch. And so then he and his wife came through town a couple years later, and they had a demo copy of Social Disservices, and that was a very, very different record. If you don't know, he at the time was working in the social services field for troubled youths, and had to write an album about the treacherous, dark, inhumane world that he had been living in for 10 years as a career. And so this is a reaction to all of that. It is dark. It is absolutely menacing. And I think it really showed his effectiveness at using his music to portray what he had going on in his head. I love this. Love this little mini poster. This is an early painting by Austin there. He does a lot of his own artwork. There were 2 variants of this Flenser reissue of the Social Disservices. One was clear and one was black. So there's the black version, and then there was a CD digipack version of it, So the only thing about it was these early recordings were self-recorded in a basement, and he, over the years, became less and less satisfied with the sound quality on them, although the material was brilliant. I haven't listened to this one in a while. I really should pick this one up, but Social Disservices was absolutely chilling. It's a dark record, and maybe I could say kind of goes back to being a black metal record for how dark it is. But here really I think is the final moment where Panopticon seemed like a DIY underground kind of band, because the next thing that came out was Kentucky. So we never expected Kentucky to be such a big turning point for the band, I don't think. For the project, and I don't know, it's kind of weird when you call one person a band, but man, if there ever was a one-man band that sounds like an entire band, it is Panopticon. I cannot think of any other musician who I both think of as an insanely talented guitar player, songwriter, and drummer equally. There's nobody who I think of as both guitarist and drummer. So, like, I really can't explain it any better than that. Like, some people, they can do a little bit of everything, but they're, you know, mainly a guitar player with some drum skills on the side or something like that. But the man does nothing lightly. Everything he does, he executes to the nth degree and does so insanely talented. It's just an amazing person to watch the creative process go through. So anyways, Kentucky when it came out, and Austin held his ground and said this is going to be a vinyl release. We're not fucking around with CDs this time. So we wound up collaborating with Handmade Birds on the original vinyl issue of Kentucky. And this was an album written as an ode to the state, which he would soon be leaving. And sadly. So what wound up happening was he got an internship at a brewery in Norway and lived there for 6 months. And when he came back home, they were going to move to Minnesota to start up Hammerheart Brewing. So we put this out with Handmade Birds. I believe there's 200 black copies, 200 green copies, 250 and 250. Maybe that's it. But these, I believe, sold out in pre-order through Handmade Birds within like 2 weeks, and then sold out with Pagan Flames maybe 2 weeks later or so. These things were gone in an instant. And this album is tremendous. I don't think we realized how talented of a songwriter was until he just burped this album out in a couple of days. And this really was the turning point for the project. So many people just gave this so much praise. And we were sold out of them like before people even heard them. So quickly, there is a Flenser reissue of Kentucky, which came a couple years later. Beautiful vinyl on this one. I think there's like a spot on it or something. I'm gonna take forever to put this back all together, so I hope you appreciate this video, you guys, and I hope it's actually rolling. And then there was another Bindrune and Nordvis reissue a couple years later. He changes the cover on this one a little bit every time it is reissued. So here's the Bindrune Lost 40. That one's fucking amazing. Yeah, okay. So Kentucky, big turning point, big record, amazing. It's the first one mastered by Colin Marston, who we continued to work with over the years. So Kentucky came out, he went to Norway to apprentice, came back, and moved to Minnesota. And at that time, I was out of a job. And I was sitting around the house looking at Facebook and realizing Austin is going through a big meltdown. He was, let's just say he was dragging his feet in Kentucky, moving to Minnesota. So I wrote him up and I said, hey dude, I noticed you're having some problems moving. If you need help, let me know, I'll do anything. So he picked me up, took me down to Kentucky. We got really shit-faced drunk. That's kind of a common theme every time we hang out. And we wound up packing up the rest of his house and moving it in a couple of days. Went up to Minnesota, saw the new house, and just made that final push to really get him moved out of Kentucky into Minnesota, and help kind of cut that cord. It was painful, but it has been amazing to watch him flourish in Minnesota, as a person, as a brewer, an artist, a father, and friend. And so in being in Minnesota is a lot closer to me than Kentucky is. Louisville is about 8 hours away, and Minnesota for me is about 4.5 hours away. So we'll get into that more and more. We did wind up doing a Kentucky CD version on Pagan Flames. That was a fucking nightmare, but here it is. One of his belt buckles on there. So that's that. So Kentucky was a big turning point, and then it seemed like not long after that, getting settled in Minnesota, he wound up writing and recording Rose to the North. And when he was recording this album, called me up and said, Ben, I have a part on this album that's about, it's kind of about you helping me move out of Kentucky, and I want you to sing it. Come on up and we will hit the vocal booth. So we did. Here's the vinyl version on Binder. I wound up singing 2 separate parts on it. It turned out really well. Proud to have taken part in the recording. There's that beauty. How about that? So, another brilliant record. It was kind of funny during the process of writing this one. He told me this one is going to be super laid back, dark metal. And when I heard it, I was like, dude, this is fast, furious, and insane. It was not the album that I was expecting this to be after he had described it as like, I'm going to tone it down, I'm going to lay it back, it's going to be a lot more melodic than heavy, but I mean, you know, Rose to the North, it's fucking insane. So I believe actually I screwed up. Before that one came out, this Vestiges split came out on Flenser, and this has 2 songs from Vestiges and I believe 3 from Panopticon. One of them, Collapse and Die, is a Suicide Nation cover. Not a whole lot to look at on this one. I can't remember if this is just black vinyl or not. No. There's that one. And again, like if you are a big Panopticon fan, you owe it to yourself to check out some of the splits. I think they get a little bit too easily forgotten, and might as well be a Panopticon completionist. And with that, today, as of the filming of this, we announced there's a teaser for the Nechochuan split with Panopticon, which I'm really stoked to hear. So then, man, the chronology on this is kind of, yeah, okay, I think we're still good. So, this next one is a split with Falls of Raros, and this is called Brotherhood. And the Falls of Raros material on here is insanely great. I haven't listened to this in a long time, I really need to. But the Panopticon material on here is also maybe some of my favorite Panopticon material. So this was written when he was in Norway, and it's kind of like a nod to Norwegian black metal. It's a lot darker, it's a lot more visceral, I think, than most of what you would know of as Panopticon material. This is such an awesome release. Falls Aurora's material is fucking great, and the Panopticon stuff is just brilliant. I think it's a lot more basic in structure, a lot more Burzum-y in style. Come on, can't get that to fit in there. Oh, there's a download code. Maybe Discogs would be your best chance, but it is also on Bandcamp, so get on that. So, I mean, then it just seems like the productivity of this man, every year, another full length, another full length. It's just been insane. I'm sure most people who know anything about him know it's crazy to fathom that he's a father, a brewer, a husband, and a musician with so much fucking output. I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to hammer again how important it is that Panopticon fans also check out Cedar. This is Austin's doom band with a couple other members. Brilliant stuff. It's atmospheric, kind of funeral-ish in a lot of ways, but it's deeply spiritual, moving, and beautiful in the way that his music is. Only it's a lot slower. It's a lot more heady and atmospheric, and it's just enveloping, really. So that's the first record for Winter Fire. There were a couple of EPs that came out on CDR, like the early Panopticon ones, but I don't have copies of those. I wish I did. I never got them. So that is that. And then they did this double record, Genunga Gap, and this came out on Binderoon, CD only. But man, you've gotta hear this. It's insanely good. It's just the breadth of this band that just sonically encapsulates the most infinite just galaxies of doom. It's so damn good. You gotta hear this. And it's 2 full albums worth of material. So again, the insane amount of output of this guy is incredible. I've seen Cedar live twice. I believe I've seen Panopticon live 3 times now. And by the way, I think I can announce it. They're doing a live Panopticon record, and it sounds insanely amazing. That brings us next to Autumn Eternal. Brilliant record that just insanely well encapsulates the golden leaves of autumn. It just sounds exactly like that feeling that I get from walking amidst the yellow leaves of October. Austin and I have gone on a great many hikes together, and that's something that's a very big part of my life and his as well. He's more of a world traveler, and he has hiked the forests of Alaska, Norway, Germany, fucking all over the place, and I'm jealous about it. But whenever we get together, we really try and get out and enjoy some trees and leaves together. So this album sounds like that, and it really hits home for me. It's a really special record to me because of those times that we've shared together in the forest. CD version as well. Back with you. Had to flip over the record again. This time it's Benjamin Todd's I Will Rise, which is a record that I bought for him a couple of months ago because I love it. So next we have a split with Germany's Vogelflüster, which is a band that he has been friends with since the days of MySpace. Maybe before Femin's Marca. I'm really not sure, but they have been absolute blood brothers for so many years. They're very close and visit one another very often. Vogelflüster is maybe Germany's answer to Panopticon, if you will. Highly melodic, atmospheric, forest-dwelling black metal. It's not a band that really catches on too well with the American audience for some reason. I don't know if they're too German or what. We've just never really been able to pin down why Vogelflüster hasn't blown up with people around here. But it is what it is. They play an original song and then they cover each other's song on here, which is a fun way to kind of celebrate the split format. I got stuff doing this. So then the next release we did was, and I'm saying we because I kind of work with Binderoon in a number of different ways. And yeah, that's that. So here we did Revisions of the Past. This is a reissue on vinyl and CD of the On the Subject of Mortality album and Social Disservices. Now check out this fucking amazing artwork here. Done by Nate Burns, who is a tattoo artist in Ohio. Available for hire. Does amazing album covers. You should check him out. Social Disservices, as you'll recognize. So this features completely reworked. I've never heard an album go through such a transformation. So much so that I don't really have the ability to say whether I prefer one or the other. It really almost feels like a whole new album on both accounts here. You got lyrics. You'll see in a lot of album covers and artwork of his albums, there is photography from his wife Becca Lund, who is a really talented artist. I will put a link to her Instagram down below so you can check out her stuff. She does jewelry. She's an amazing cook and a wonderful person who I'm proud to call a friend for life. And then Marty, as a gift, sent me test press versions of that. Thank you, Marty. And the CD edition is just another good looking digipack. One thing about Binderoon, man, just great layout on everything they do. Marty does a good job on all of this stuff. Yeah, I already showed you that. So then there was a little bit of a lull in productivity for the live debut of the band. And that went really well. Kind of little mini tours here and there, festivals and whatnot. I shared the stage with them up in Minnesota. And then this beast of a record came out, The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness, Parts 1 and 2. This is a double album, but you could honestly think of this as, I don't know, it's such a huge release. So Panopticon's identity really has been since Kentucky, maybe even before that. Yeah, definitely with like collapsing on a merging of American folk music with metal, and that has been something that has really defined the sound of the band, and I think brought a lot of fans to the band. And it parallels so well European black metal, but in a way that sounds wholly American and even Southern in a lot of ways. So that has been merged and worked in throughout all the albums. But on this album, the black metal is on one record and the everything else is on the other record. And this is a return to, I think, darkness and anger on the metal record. Beautiful photography all over the place by Becca, like I said. And then the country album, I'll explain that in a moment, is also just wonderful. Now, so it's, I don't really know. I wouldn't call this country. It's non-metal. It's really all over the place. There's some very definite elements of folk, but some songs sound almost like a doom song, almost like Explosion in the Sky, in a way that they're heavy and huge and not folky. So I just, that's just kind of my 2 cents on that one. But the black metal stuff sounds so fucking good. It is intense, it is angry, and it is dark, and it is relevant in a time when this feels like a proper reaction to what life has been like in America in the last few years. The vinyl edition, yes, I did get the deluxe thing that we did. Now there's a screen printed jacket on here that was limited to 100 and sold out, I think, in like 6 hours. Part 2, part 1, fun stuff. And then, man, I'm sick about talking about Panopticon at this point, but I'm in the mood to listen to some. The most recent release we have is the Crescendo of Dusk. 2 songs, single-sided. One is metal, one is not metal. Nice green there with the phoenix etched on the back. And if you don't know, this is the Laurentian Forest Metal Group sigil, which signifies metal bands of the Laurentian Peninsula. Look it up if you're cool. Brilliant release, another EP. There are more Panopticon releases just around the corner. It's just a never-ending stream of greatness, and it's inexplicable. There's no other project in metal that I feel has given so much quality, wonderful content, showed so much brilliant talent with fans, and definitely no other metal band that has had as much of an effect on me as a person throughout the years, through friendship, fellowship, and beer over the years. It's just been amazing. I still remember after Kentucky had come out, he was so overwhelmed with the success of it, talking on the phone and saying, you know what, it's been so good, maybe I should just hang it up and stop making music with Panopticon and do something else. Like, what better note can you end on? And I was like, dude, if you stop making music under Panopticon, if you stop making Panopticon, I don't know what I would do with myself. And he forged on and carried on, and thank hell that happened. So here we have it. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Panopticon releases have been, and by all means, please check out some of the Seder or the split material or the lesser known Panopticon material. Don't just focus on these collectible full lengths that people are going crazy about. So much of his material is worth checking out. And also, I'm going to put a link in the description down below on the Binderoon YouTube page. There is a full set of Austin's solo acoustic set, which happened a couple of weeks ago. I say solo, but there's accompanying musicians playing other instruments alongside him. It's really great. So we will see you next time. Thank you for watching, and listen to Panopticon. It's great.